This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Welcome to People Tech, the podcast of the HCM Technology Report. We're recording from HR Tech in Vegas, brought to you by our friends and partners at Fuel 50. Here's your host, Mark Feffer.
Welcome to People Tech, the podcast of the HCM Technology Report. I'm Mark Feffer, and recording again today at the Expo Hall of the HR Technology Conference and Exhibition, and I'm going to allow my guest to introduce herself.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Allyn Bailey. I am the Executive Director of Hiring Success for SmartRecruiters, which basically means that I'm responsible with my team for making sure that everybody who comes onto our technology is equipped throughout their implementation all the way through their evolution with the ability to achieve hiring success, right? That ability to hire the right people at the right time.
So you're in a really interesting space right now. When you look out at the business, recruiting and talent acquisition, what goes through your head?
So I'll tell you what I'm really intrigued by right now is I think we're at this precipice where there is both an evolution in technology that's happening, organizations who are struggling with the new world of work and what does that mean to them, and what's that going to mean in terms of how they hire, who they're hiring, what they're looking for, and that intersection between them. So I think if you were going to ask me this question, 3 years ago, my answer would have been different. I would have said, listen, it's all now about how are we going to leverage artificial intelligence? How are we going to map data most effectively? How are we going to connect our systems so that we're efficient and that we can make smart decisions, right? I think now, post-pandemic, I think the question is how is technology going to step up to the plate to help businesses think differently about how they hire, who they hire, when they hire, where they hire, and how they equip them to be able to do their jobs. And I think that's, yes, we've been there, but I think we're really going to have to rethink our strategies for how we do it.
Do you think most businesses are sort of up for that task?
I think they're forced to be up for that task. I think even the ones who think that they're just going to go kind of dial it back to, 2018 and start from there are finding that that's not really working for them the way they hoped it would. So I think that even if they're not clearly articulating that they're having to transform and change the way in which they think about the workforce and the way they think about hiring and mobility and et cetera, they're being forced with those new choices in front of them because employees are forcing it. The paradigm shift has already happened, right?
Right.
And whether companies choose to participate in that or not, I think is a moot question anymore. I think employees are forcing them to.
That's a really good point. I mean, and a lot of people are saying it, that the power has shifted and all of that kind of thing. How is that influencing your business?
I think where the biggest change is that, we used to be able to play this game where we would, we would go out there and we would say, okay, as a company, we are going to hire X number of people, and then we're not going to hire them, and right. We treated everybody like widgets, right? And we put all these fancy words around things like candidate experience, and we're going to make this all seamless and flow, and everybody's going to feel good about themselves and employer branding. But the truth of the matter was, it was from a very company-centric perspective that said, how can I use these tools and capabilities in order to get you interested when I need you and only when I need you for what I need you for, right? Very transactional relationship. And I think that in the new world of work, employees and candidates have it's not a game anymore. They really have all the control. And they're not interested in not having the information they want. They want salary transparency. They want simplicity. They're not willing to jump through the hoops that we were putting them through and just saying, well, that's just the way the technology works. So from my perspective, it means as a business and as a technology business in this space, We got to get better at serving the candidate side of the house in order to allow our key customers, which are companies, to be effective. And that really is a switch in paradigm.
I really thought that HR Tech had jumped the shark.
Yeah.
When time clocks started to call themselves experience platforms.
Oh, dear Lord.
And engagement platforms.
Yeah.
So how much of what I hear about recruiting tech nowadays is hype versus how much of it do you think is grounded in reality?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Working in the tech and that side of the tech, listen, 90% of it's hype. Honestly, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we're talking about what we're doing in the AI space, if we talk about what we're doing in the automation space, even the implementation of video into the market, it is still a patchwork set of solutions. It is still not we're not really holistically solving the big problems yet. Now, I'm hoping that we're getting closer to doing it, but it's still, I think it's a lot of hype and still the same old. Listen, if as a candidate, right, and I've been one recently, I know other people are out there and have done this, and the application experience has not changed dramatically since the beginning of time. And we know it's supposed to. So why not, right?
Well, we keep saying it's supposed to.
Right, but we don't do anything about it.
Right.
But here's the consequence. Here's the problem. Now you can actually go on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and you're going to see people clearly saying, as candidates, I can now tell which applicant tracking system is being used, and if X1 is being used, I refuse to apply. That changes the game, right? Because as companies, we used to think, they're just going to do it. They have to, right? Yes, we'll try and make it better and easier and make it more compelling, but there was really no forcing function. The forcing function now is it's not just candidates and employees leaving companies because they're not satisfied with how, when, and where and work gets done and that dynamic. Candidates are now leaving the workforce pool in that same way.
So how has that changed SmartRecruiters' approach?
I think in the most basic way, it said, listen, we've got to get back to the basics, and there's a lot of stuff you can put on the outskirts of a system and a solution that can make you have all the bells and whistles and feel fancy and kind of have all those pieces. But at the end of the day, if you at your core are not creating a solution that is simple, easy, efficient, and doesn't have a whole lot of bull around it, then it won't work. And so it's really forced us to take a step back and to say, are we building a product? Let's make sure we're building a product and sustaining a product out there that at its core makes it easy to connect people to jobs. And all the other stuff, that's great. And let's partner with people and kind of see how we can connect those pieces in. But it should be a simple application. Let's go back to the basics, simple application process. Simple, easy for hiring managers to leverage and to use, right? These are all the things we were supposed to be doing and companies said they were doing for years that, we got off on the wayside, right? We got all excited with the bells.
So skills must factor in to your thinking. Mm-hmm. Certainly seems to be factoring into the thinking of a lot more people than it was 2 years ago. Is that impacting your view of the space? Absolutely.
So I will say I believe that we are headed towards a future in the near future, not decades from now, but mere years from now, where the formal way of articulating who I am and seeing if I'm relevant to you as a candidate based on my resume is going to be a moot point. It's not going to happen anymore, right? Because those are static. They don't evolve. I can't really match you effectively to opportunities that way. I think the idea of an employee or an individual owning their skills and their evolution in those skills and being able to articulate those skills and show their skills is going to be what makes the difference between those people who are successful and which companies are able to understand and untap that information, right? So if I think about where we've got to evolve from a TA tech stack perspective, it's how do we help people articulate and show us what skills they have so that we can connect them in the right ways. And it's got to go past this self-reporting process of resume hunting and posting and all of those pieces. We've got to start thinking about how we're leveraging assessments differently. We need to start thinking about how we're leveraging AI to be able to look not just at kind of that machine learning keyword matching piece, but really start looking at attributable skills across roles, and being able to do attribution in that space. These are going to be big things, because skills at the end of the day is what a company needs. A company needs to understand what skills they need to have, what skills are going to happen in the future, and what people have those skills so they can evolve with the company. And how we capture that information, how we track that information, and how we manage it is going to be central to talent management.
I've heard it said that there's 3 ways to get skills. You can build them, you can borrow them, or you can buy them.
Mm-hmm.
It's if a company is doing all of those, if it's an enterprise, it seems like that would be a really complicated thing to implement, trying to sort of orchestrate full-time people with consultants, with gig people, or short-time people. How does that affect the equation for employers? Are they thinking in terms of, okay, we want 30% to be gig workers and 40% to be full-timers? Or
I don't think they really are. I think that we've been playing around this story of workforce planning since the beginning of time, right? It has not. I have not seen out there a company that's really solved the nut on this one. And how can you actually have a clear, visible path to workforce planning? And I think the downstream implication of that is if you have a hard time understanding clearly what you need, it becomes even more complicated then to determine where you're going to get that talent, right? Are you going to buy, build, or borrow? And right now, all those systems that you buy talent from, so your acquisition systems, the build systems, which are all your training and development platforms and skill-based platforms there, and your borrow, which is all of your contingent workforce kind of management platforms, mostly are disconnected. So my insight into who's in which system and who's there, how would I know which talent to pick from, is like a shot in the dark, right? It's not connected. Until that happens, until I can look at it holistically, I don't know how I make decisions in that frame.
It is another place that makes me think the employers really have work to do if this is going to work. Mm-hmm. And my impression is a lot of them aren't doing it.
I think they're overwhelmed by it. I think, my experience coming from, working in large technology enterprises for a long time is that the idea of mapping and articulating skills, understanding who has what skills and what skills we even want, almost feels like a bureaucratic pressure test to an organization, right? Suddenly we're starting to have questions that are not necessarily about skills, but they become about the politics of the value of certain types of skills and which roles attribute to them more. And it becomes this rat's nest, right? And so people back off of it really quickly, or they get immersed in it for, years and years and never have any good outcome from it. I think the issue is that employers and companies overcomplicate it, right? And I think where we can go in and start working with companies to help them think about how to think about this in the simplest way, how to take iterative steps to move in this direction without feeling like they've got to bite off the whole enchilada, or if they don't do it, map it completely end to end to end to end, that it will, they can't do something today, right? Like there's a sense that you have to know everything before you can do anything in this skill space. I think that's the wrong story. I think pragmatically, we've got to figure out, start at the very basics, right? Job by job. Dear Lord, just start job by job. How many times do we just start with the basics and say, recruiter to hiring manager, what skills do you really need in the job, on your team, and for the company right now to be successful? And let's start looking for people based on those skills, based on these arbitrary factors like education and degree and et cetera. And then we can back ourselves into larger, more complex workforce planning strategies. But waiting until all that's done before you can start making traction is killing organizations. It's too complex.
Well, is that an opportunity for platforms like yours? It seems like developing the whole skills approach of a company is pretty fundamental to the recruiting that goes on.
Yeah, I think it is. And my, as I work with customers every day, helping them look at their TA strategies, my answer to them is that, listen, the technology honestly exists out there for you to do these things. We can help you do these things today. It's a question of how are you aligning your business processes and your strategies, the way you're thinking about the simplest parts of your process, and how can we help you do that by leveraging our technology to get there, right? So, for example, like I said, working with them and saying, let's really look at what does it look like to build a skills-based job description? What does it look like to have the right assessment strategy that is not overly complex, but gets at the information that you need that allows you to make smart decisions quickly? We can start today putting those sorts of things into place without waiting for, again, big answers to happen at the kind of Uber HR level.
So if you look out a few years, what changes do you see coming to recruiting technology?
I think, much like you were saying before, companies are going to need to be able to have a more holistic understanding of their entire workforce, and we're going to have to start looking at more talent management software. When I say talent management software, I'm talking about software that allows me to connect the dots between my gig workforce, my internal workforce, my alumni workforce, my and then my kind of applicant or talent pool workforce. And I have to have full visibility to that, as well as overlaying it with my workforce strategy so that I can then decide how I want to leverage those people. That's true power, right? We start to connect those pieces. And I think we're going to start getting there. Right now, it's through integrations and partnerships. I see lots of companies starting to partner up and start saying, how can we solve some of these problems little by little? And I think we're going to see an evolution over the course of the next few years of more and more platforms being able to holistically address this in ways that are very talent focused, maybe a little bit different from what's kind of happening in the HRIS space today. Yeah.
Lynn, thanks so much for talking to me today.
It was awesome. Thank you.
You've been listening to People Tech of the HCM Technology Report. This HR Tech series is graciously brought to you by our partners at Fuel 50. For all other HR, sourcing, and recruiting news, check out hcmtechnologyreport.com.
Do you love news about LinkedIn, Indeed, Google, and just about every other recruitment tech company out there?
Hell yeah. I'm Chad.
I'm Cheese.
We're the Chad and Cheese Podcast.
All the latest recruiting news and insights are on our show.
Dripping in snark and attitude.
Subscribe today wherever you listen to your podcasts. We out.
Faith in the news media has been challenged, making it even harder to get stories told. The Friday Reporter podcast was created to help audiences better understand the media by hosting journalists who will answer the questions to which we need answers. Join me every Friday to hear more.